Hello, I'm Noel Capon.
大家好，我是郑玉煌。
I hope you will all support genuine, non-counterfeit books.
支持正版，支持亚马逊。
And I believe that a book about marketing should be placed within the context of the managers who are going to read the book and hopefully work on and use the ideas in the book, and hence Marketing for China's Manager. Key function of the organization is marketing, because it's marketing that deals with customers and has to find customers for the organization.
利润从何而来？利润只有一个来，那就是企业的顾客。
So I see this as a very exciting time for marketing in China, now moving from marketing outside the national borders into the rest of the world.
各位亚马逊的网友，大家下午好，我是销售市场杂志社渠道版的主编王晨，非常高兴能和著名的营销学教授诺埃尔·凯普教授以及郑玉煌教授一起做客亚马逊名人访谈。他们两位为我们带来的他们的最新的力作写给中国经理人的市场营销学。那么首先要请两位嘉宾跟大家打个招呼。
Welcome, Chinese friends. I'm very pleased to be here at Beijing doing this interview with Amazon.
大家下午好啊，非常高兴能够在亚马逊名人访谈这里跟大家见面，跟大家交流。
So, Mr. Capon, you have recently published the Marketing for Chinese Manager. Why are Chinese managers supposed to read this book?
Well, that's a good question. I think the basic issue has to do with the title of the book. And this book is entitled Marketing for China's Managers, Today's Managers and Tomorrow's Managers. And I think there are far too many books, marketing books and other books that are written in Europe and written in the United States that are translated into Chinese, and that's absolutely fine. But the point about this book is that it contains what I think is the best thinking about marketing in the West, the best recent thinking, and also a lot of the ideas are very well worked and very well used by major and smaller corporations in many parts of the world. So it's very much a very solid, up-to-date marketing book. But what it also has is that it's written for China. It's written for China's manager. So it's not just a straight translation. The book is really a book about marketing, but about China. And I believe that the people, the readers who buy the book on Amazon and read the book will find the book very familiar to them rather than foreign. And in a very real sense, this is a collaboration, this book, at really three different levels. Firstly, it's a collaboration, a personal collaboration between Professor Zhen and myself. At a second level, it's a collaboration between one of China's major institutions of higher learning, Tsinghua University, and Columbia University in New York. And at the third level, it's a collaboration between China and the United States. And President Xi and President Obama just met fairly recently, and one of the things that they talked about after their meetings was how there should be more collaboration between China and the United States. Now, I personally do not believe that either president was actually thinking about a marketing book when they were talking about collaboration, but I think that what we've done here is a small step towards that more general collaboration between our countries. But the basic reason, to get back to your question, for a Chinese manager to read this book is that it's, I believe, top flight work on marketing, and it's set in a Chinese context that they will find very familiar.
So, Mr. Capon, why you specifically make a book for the Chinese manager?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. First of all, just from a marketing point of view, China is a big market, and I like my ideas to be generally made available to managers all around the world. In this particular case, I happen to be able to collaborate with Professor Zhen, and it we both talk a lot about China, and it's been also an opportunity for me personally, although I've been to China many times and have many Chinese managers as my students, to learn more about China myself. So that whenever I personally take on a project, I want to develop something for my audience, but also to learn something in the process. I believe very strongly that companies will only be successful if they get their marketing right. I think that we all have an interest in companies being successful, whether they be in the United States or Britain or China. And I believe that a book about marketing should be placed within the context of the managers who are going to read the book and hopefully work on and use the ideas in the book, and hence marketing for China's managers.
As you mentioned, you have some Chinese students and you've been in China for several times. Do you find something interesting and exciting in China's marketing?
I think that China is coming to a stage where marketing is becoming ever more important. I mean, the fact of the matter is that China's growth rate for the past several years has been extremely high, around 8, 9, 10%. And more recently it's dropped down to 4 or 5%. Now, when you're operating at 9, 10% growth rate, an awful lot of sloppy stuff can be done inside organizations and you can get away with it, inefficiencies and so forth. But at a much slower growth rate, those inefficiencies show up and cause problems. So I think that's a key issue. But what I see is that hitherto China's major issue for Chinese companies was production. Very strong focus on product, make a lot of product for the customers that were out there. So one could say that there was in fact a shortage of supply, and the problem was more supply. Now I think there's a transition, and the problem is not supply, and problem is demand.
Yes.
So we're into a world. China is coming into a world of shortage of demand, and when you're in a world of shortage of demand, the key function of the organization is marketing, because it's marketing that deals with customers and has to find customers for the organization. So I believe that marketing in China, although it's been important for many years, is now getting to a stage where it becomes even more important, absolutely critical. For organizations to survive and grow. You just have to get your marketing right. You have to figure out which customers you want to serve, how to serve them, and so forth. And although of course we've still got to produce, etc., the balance has to shift.
Thank you. 那么郑教授刚才那个开普教授提到，就是中国企业一向是非常擅长于大规模的制造啊。那么您认为一个企业的核心竞争力是什么呢？
这个我个人觉得毫无疑问应该是市场营销。这么说不仅仅因为我是教营销，或者说开普教授是营销学教授，而是任何一个企业它的存在的目的，我们通常觉得就是为了股东来盈利。那么大家想想看，利润从何而来？利润只有一个来源，那就是企业的顾客。所以你要怎么样让顾客愿意心甘情愿花钱买你的产品或者服务，是吧？而且还不止一次，非常多次。那么这就是我们说营销它的基本工作就是吸引顾客，保留顾客。那么从这样的一个角度来说，营销就是所有企业最核心的竞争力。那么事实上，今天很多企业包括很多企业家们，他们已经忘记了这一点，因为今天的企业很大，咱们看到咱们的央企或者世界全球500强这些企业都非常大，然后大到什么规模呢？大到几十万员工，是吧？然后利润可能上千亿这样的企业，那么他们之间就造成了这样的一个现状，就是壁垒林立，每个部门之间都是非常深的这个壁垒之间，他们是看不见彼此的。那每个部门都觉得自己非常重要做研发的做金融的，做财务，做会计，做人力资源，是吧？做营销的都觉得很重要，但是他们忽略了 在这个企业刚刚创立的时候，任何一个企业，不管你今天多大，在它刚刚创立的时候，只有1到2个创始人的时候，你去问问这个当时创立的企业家们，他们当时在做什么？那个时候没有会计，没有律师，没有人力资源经理，唯一要做的这1到2位创始人，就是要把他们的产品或者服务，那么销售出去。我们说，通常说这就是营销。那么所以说，这就是最核心的竞争力。任何企业，不管你多成功，如果顾客一旦不开始买你的东西之后，你就开始遇到问题。我们过去这10几20年也看到很多全球知名的大企业，今天却走下神坛，甚至破产。那么就是他们犯了这样的一个错误。
实际上中国很多企业发展到一定阶段，有一定规模之后，他们的老总实际上还是这个公司最大的业务员。
应该说，我非常同意这样的一句话。但是业务员这个词说起来有那么一定的短视行为。
对，
通常我们认为业务员只是希望这次卖东西出去，但是我们说的营销是不仅仅是卖，我们是从顾客的需求出发，然后从产品的设计开始就已经包括营销在内，因为我们要从理解顾客需要来设计这个好的产品或者服务，然后把它卖给他之后还是营销，因为你要提供不断的服务，吸引他继续来购买你的产品或者服务，而且要让他满意、忠诚，甚至推荐给其他的朋友。所以我们说，这个营销是一个全流程，而不仅仅只是简单的销售。所以我个人觉得这个业务员稍微比较狭窄，它只是营销的一部分。
对。不过他非常直观很多老总是非常强调这一点，因为他们可能在各个方面都，尤其是民营企业不如国有企业那么有厚的底子，所以他们头一位的还是这个销售，收入从哪里来，下个月工资从哪里发可能越大的企业在这一点上感受可能更为深刻。比如说我们知道这个12年的时候，美的这么大的一个公司，当时应该算中国最大的这个家电企业，一口气就裁掉了5万人那么在此之前市场非常好的时候，这5万人实际上是他的资产，但是当整个市场开始收缩遇冷的时候，他却毫不犹豫的马上就把它裁掉。为什么？因为5万人一个月工资那是不可想象的一件事情。So Mr. Kippen, is marketing especially important for the Chinese company right now?
Well, I think so. I think it addresses the issue I just talked about the change in of the Chinese economy. But I think another important issue has to do with less about the domestic market and more moving out into foreign markets. Because if you look at foreign brands or foreign multinationals, in fact, there aren't very many Chinese foreign multinationals, successful foreign multinationals, compared, for example, to the many there are in the United States. And I think it's going to be a challenge for Chinese companies, to move outside the China market into other markets. Now, there are some great successes. I think Lenovo is doing very well. Purchased, of course, the IBM PC business. Another company that's doing very well is Huawei. If I pronounce that correctly, is becoming very fast. I mean, they've had their problems in the United States, but in the rest of the world being very successful. And I think there's a very interesting sort of issue here, and that is that how Chinese companies go abroad. That many Chinese companies have been abroad and been very successful, basically on a low-cost, low-price strategy. We certainly see that in many products you see in the department stores, clothing and so forth. And Huawei may have started that way, but Huawei puts tremendous amount of effort and tremendous percent of sales revenues into R&D. It's got very extensive R&D, and their success, I think, has become, they've moved away from, they may have started off as a low-cost, low-price producer, but have moved away from that into really developing very high-quality, lots of R&D type type products, and have also adopted many of the practices of leading U.S. companies. So, for example, one of their approaches is an area which I'm very familiar with, the strategic account management, where the company focuses on some of its major customers. I mean, they had people from IBM teach them about that, and they now clearly have a very world-class strategic account program. So I think for the issue for China's managers now, as we move outside China, as I'm sure they will, is to think, well, of course, low cost, low prices, that's one strategy, but I think what opens up now is a whole variety of different approaches which China's managers may have to learn for the first time. So I see this as a very exciting time for marketing in China, now moving from marketing outside the national borders into the rest of the world.
Just like you mentioned, Huawei has put 10% of its revenue to DNB. R&D. So many Chinese managers think Huawei is successful because their technology with low price. Is it okay in the United States market or Europe market when Huawei come into their market and show up as a low-cost, high-tech producer?
Well, I think that's a great place to be. If you can be both high-tech, giving tremendous value in terms of the products and services that serve customer needs, and also do that at a low price, that's almost really a winning combination. That's often very difficult to do, of course, because of the amount of money you're putting into R&D. You need the higher prices to be able to fund that R&D. Huawei seems to be able to do that very well. I know they've certainly given Ericsson, who has been the market leader, very difficult time. But I think that there are many different, in any market there are many different segments. And people want very different things. Some people are prepared to pay lots of money for lots of value in terms of technology and brand and so forth. Others much less so. So I think one of the lessons that Chinese companies are going to have to learn is to be able to segment markets, figure out which particular ones that they want to go after, and go after those strongly, and leave the others to other competitors.
For a big company like Huawei, they come up with a problem, and they have been successful for lowering the price and giving the high technology product. And what's next step for them? Put much more resources on the technology, or put more energy on the other segment market they have never been chose?
Well, no, I think the key for Huawei, in addition to high tech, has been how close they are to customers. That they are one of their customers, for example, is Vodafone. That's the major telecommunications company. They work very hard to understand what the problems of their customers are, as do other major companies like IBM and Citibank and all of those. And it's the deep understanding of where their customers are going and what their customers' needs are that then backs into what they do into R&D. And the notion is that they, or any company like IBM or Citibank or Cisco or any of them that are working with customers, the idea is that they are successful only if their customers are successful. So that what they need to know, have a very deep knowledge of where their customers are headed, what those issues are, and then put effort into those. Many cases that will be new technology development, but in other cases it may be something quite different, greater customer service or something, or something like that. But almost by definition, because the company's resources are always limited, even the biggest company's resources are limited, they have to make some choices of where to play and where not to play. We often use the term, or two terms. One is selectivity and concentration. Select where you're going to go and then concentrate resources. Said another way, we say concentration and concession. Decide where to concentrate and then where to concede, where to leave that to your competitor. And that's a very big choice, because what you want to do is leave to your competitor those parts of the market that you are less well able to serve, and focus on those that make sense for you.
他已经做得非常不错，已经是中国可能在国际化方面做得最成功的企业，因为它有全球75%的销售份额来自于全球海外市场，而不是中国大陆本土市场。但是它最后的堡垒是最发达的几个国家，像美国这样的国家。那么事实上，它可能稍微要学习一下以前咱们中国同业的一些教训啊。以前比如说15年前，海尔就开始去美国扩展，但是海尔在国内的这个优势，在美国它无法复制，因为海尔在国内的优势是服务。它的服务比同业要绝对领先，那么尽管它质量也许不是最好的，但是服务的好让大家给它信任，所以它可以享受到价格的这个 premium， 就是比别人卖的高一点，大家忠诚度也很高。但是到美国去，这个服务业成本太高了，你不可能再像国内做到24小时上门立刻响应上门服务，所以这个华为同样也要做这样的一个转变，可能确实像你刚才指出的这条路是它必须走，就是在技术上它必须从一个落后者或者叫追赶者也开始变成领先者，它已经在做这一步，因为它的专利申请数已经好像是全球最领先的之一了。那么它下一步要继续巩固和扩大，甚至要超越竞争对手，把他们抛在后面。等到发达国家觉得华为的技术也是全球最领先的时候，那么我相信美国的这些市场会被它拿下。
In this book, you propose 6 marketing imperatives and 4 marketing principles.
Okay.
How does your framework differ from the other approaches, such as STP and 4Ps?
Okay, good question. But most marketing textbooks, most marketing books do in fact talk about STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning, and the marketing mix. Let me suggest sort of 4 different areas that are lacking, I think, in most marketing books. The first is that people don't really understand what positioning is, which is part of the STP, and there's one part they don't understand or don't act on. Positioning means you've got to figure out your customer targets, specifically the individuals you want to communicate with and serve. Secondly, you've got to be very clear about your competitors. You've got to be clear about your value proposition. And fourthly, you've got to have what I term a reason to believe. It's one thing for marketing to develop a value proposition for customer targets. It's quite another thing for the customer target to believe that you can actually deliver on that promise. So those 4 pieces have got to be there, and they're not there in what most managers do, and they're not there in most marketing books. 3 other issues which I think are very different. We focus a fair bit on the idea of marketing opportunity. The fact that marketing is the one function of the organization whose job it is to be outside the organization, to figure out what's out there, identify opportunities, and then bring those back into the firm. Some the firm will decide to go ahead with, and some they won't. But that's part of marketing's job. The other part of marketing's job, which I don't see talked about very much or at all, is that with respect to opportunities, not only do they come from marketing, they often come from very other places. For example, the CEO may meet some investment bankers, they have ideas, or consultants have ideas of diversify here, diversify there, acquire that company, or whatever. And as you know, there are a lot of failures. And I think a lot of the failures are due to the fact that top management really doesn't understand what the marketing implications are. So one of the key issues, not only should marketing be out there identifying opportunities, they should all make sure they have a seat at the table when these other opportunities come from elsewhere and put a marketing view on that. Because there are many examples of companies that have diversified disastrously. And the failure is not because they couldn't make the product, not because they couldn't deliver the service, it's because they didn't understand the customer piece of it. Two other issues. Marketing, we tend to think of as an external sort of thing. You know, going out there, figuring out what customers want, bringing back into the organization, and then doing the R&D, etc., etc. But there's a very important internal job apart from marketing, and that is to make sure that the company delivers on the value proposition. Marketing's job is to create the value proposition, what value we intend to deliver to customers, but it's other parts of the organization who often have to do the work. I think marketing has a major role as like a universal joint in an automobile of making sure that those other parts of the organization are in line with what it's trying to do at the marketplace. So there's it's called internal marketing, and there's a term that's used a lot now of internal branding. We brand externally for customers, but branding internally, let's make sure all our people in the organization know what we're doing in order to deliver value to customers. And the fourth issue is it's one thing to do all our marketing planning, but what's absolutely critical is to have a very strong monitor and control function. And that does two things. First of all, what comes out of the planning process should be a set of for performance objectives, whether they be sales revenue or profit or whatever some objective. But then going through time, you have to measure what you're doing. And if you're doing your performance is what the planned performance is, that's fine, and you keep on going. On the other hand, when performance starts to diverge from plan, you've got to get back on track pretty quick. So there has to be a good monitor control process to identify when we're going off track and getting us back on. 2 points. One point has to do with the performance. The second point has to do with the planning. So when we do the marketing planning, various parts of the organization have to do certain things to make sure the plan gets fulfilled. So the second piece of the monitor and control process is to just check up. Are we doing, in fact, what we said we would do? And I find that in companies, that monitor and control process tends to get a bit lost. We tend to focus on the external, we tend to focus on the planning, we tend to focus on what we're going to do. We don't do a good enough job on checking off of how well we're actually doing, and therefore make the changes to get back on track. So I think those are four of the key issues. Those relate to the imperatives. I haven't seen anybody else really talk about these principles, and let me just mention those briefly. 4 principles which, if you like, sort of form the foundation for the decisions that any marketing manager makes. That you sort of ask yourself questions about, do they conform to these 4 principles? And they are very simply the one that I mentioned earlier: selectivity and concentration. You cannot spread your resources around. You have to make bets. You have to make some judgments and put your resources behind those judgments. Second of all, you've got to deliver value to customers. That's what it's all about. If you're not delivering value to customers, they're going to go somewhere else and you're going to go out of business. The third thing is that value has got to be better than the other guy. So you've got to secure what I call differential advantage. And the fourth item is integration. It's not just marketing's job to do what it does, figuring out what needs to be done. The whole organization has to be focused on that value delivery. At some level, everybody in the organization has a marketing role. If you're doing something in an organization that ultimately doesn't result in value to the customer, that job really shouldn't be there. So I think those areas are one that are laid out very clearly in this book, and I don't see those in other marketing books, let alone a marketing in China book, which is where they are.
Mr. Kippen,
Yeah.
What do I have to recommend except your own book?
Well, I could recommend some of my other books, but I think that let me just pick two or three here. First of all, there's an author by the name of Jim Collins who's written two very good books, one called Good to Great and another called Built to Last, which talk about the successful major companies, looking at a whole number of different factors, and those are research books built on real data, and I think that they are very well worth reading, and they're pretty well known in the United States. There's another book which by an author called Hermann Simon, who's a German consultant who wrote a book a number of years ago called something like the 50 successful unknown companies. And he's basically talking about the middle-sized or smaller companies in Germany, and there are a lot of very good messages in what those companies have done to be successful. And he's just published a related book about global companies. So the man's name is Hermann Simon.
But it's unknown. Those companies are unknown.
The most unknown companies. That's right. I think that's in the title. Well worth reading. Another book I would think about, whose title I can't remember, but it's a book about pricing. We've talked about pricing, very important, yes, by an author called Reed Holden, Holden from Holden Associates. I reviewed that book, and that's an excellent book. And I will end actually with one of my own books, a book called about managing the sales force, leading the sales force, called Sales Eats First. Sales eats first. So those would be my recommendations of books that are well worth taking a look at.
Thank you very much. 那么郑教授呢，你也推荐几本你自己喜欢的书？
我个人非常喜欢跟这个营销相关的，但是又可以说是一个跨学科领域，就是说我们很多人把它叫行为经济学，或者叫心理学，或者叫这个消费者行为学等等这个领域。因为你要营销做得好，其实最根本的东西还是你要理解顾客，理解消费者，理解他们的心理，是吧？那么这本这个领域已经有很多非常畅销的书在这个，大家可能咱们读者们已经非常熟悉的有这个怪诞行为学，这个作者是原来在 MIT 的 Dan Ariely， 现在在杜克大学，他是非常著名的这个教授。那么当时他的这本书非常畅销，还没出来的时候，出版商已经给他定金100万美元啊！大家由此可以看到学术的力量。他这本书就是在讲他的研究，但是他用一种通俗的话把这些高深的学问的东西讲给别人听。类似的优秀的事实上也是华人作者。芝加哥大学有位教授叫奚凯元教授，他英文叫 Chris C， 他在咱们中国出版了一本，应该是机械工业出版社出版了一本书，叫做《别做正常的傻瓜》。这本书他送给我之后，我读了一下，非常非常喜欢，也是有很多他个人的研究在里面。那么把过去很多的这些非常有意思的心理学，就是说你为什么是个正常的傻瓜，就因为看起来你很理性，但其实你做了很多不理性的，犯了很多错误。那么这些都是基于经典的很多研究基础之上，所以这个领域我非常喜欢。还有像这个芝加哥另外一位非常著名的行为经济学家叫Thaler，这个塞勒教授，他英文版有一本书叫《Nudge》，我不知道有没有翻译成中文版。那同样非常非常有意思。事实上，我Nudge 对 NUDGE Nudge。那么事实上，我自己个人最近也刚刚结束了一个初稿，可能很快下个月就要出版，有一本书也是在这个领域，名字也跟这些书都非常的相近我给它暂时起的名字叫《理性的非理性》。我在这本书跟我合作的就谈到了10个 非常有意思的心理学现象、心理经济学的现象，包括对照效应啊、折中效应啊、等等心理账户啊、损失规避等等这些。但是跟其他这些刚才说的书，跟西凯恩教授的书，跟戴安·尔瑞的书不一样我在这里主要是利用我过去几年来给几千名的高层管理者这个交互的这个经验主要目标是对准管理者，包括政策制定者、企业管理者等等的，用各种各样的商业案例来告诉大家，学术是有可以大量的被得到应用，已经被应用。如果你了解它，你还可以做得更好。所以这是我个人非常感兴趣的领域。
好，谢谢郑教授。那么也非常感谢两位教授今天给我们带来了这么精彩的这个交流当然最重要的还是大家如果有更多的疑问，可以到这本书里面去寻找答案。谢谢大家。